I will say, as I said before, the production of this is fantastic, and this has got, you mentioned it, well, accents. This has got more accents than an episode of Mind Your Language. That's for our
Yeah.
older British viewers. Uh,
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and it is time to chow down on some tunage. In this case, offering up the dish will be the man himself, John. I'm going to go off and give it a listen. We're going to come back and discuss it in detail. John, what are we working with today, my friend?
I love the Swedish chef in Muppets, even if it was a little bit racist. Fruity, fruity, fruity. Anyway, so today we are listening to a track by Pete Doherty.
Oh, okay.
You may know him from the
The
Libertines
Libertine.
or from your local tabloid. Um,
Yeah.
and the track we listen to is Salome,
Salome. All right. Interesting.
not to be confused with salami.
Yeah, it's very, very different things, those two. All right. Well, I'll be interested. I don't think I've heard any of his, at least I could think of any of his solo stuff, outside of the Libertines. So, I'll be looking forward to hearing this. Hopefully it's not any video of him wearing a silly fucking hat, because I could go without that. But I'd love to listen to some of his music. I've always been a fan of the Libertines, so let me dart off, check this thing out, and I will come back and let you know what I think. That's pretty.
In the cold, the coldest of night, a fire lights to warm my bones. I've had enough of the dreadful cold.
This is gorgeous. That deeper bassy notation that starts things off, just little touches on the cymbals, and this really pretty acoustic guitar motif that, as Pete starts singing, is accented by little flourishes or bits of elongated notation by these stringed instruments. I certainly catch cello, and I'm pretty sure violin in there. And he's depicting this scene of being cold and starting a fire. It's all really pretty. I want to take that back and listen to it again. Let me pull it back just a little bit more. Okay. Let's relive that opening stanza.
In the cold, the coldest of night, a fire lights
That electric
to
guitar.
warm my bones. I've had enough of the dreadful cold, and from the flames up here, Salome,
Ooh, Salome.
I stand before her amazed as she dances and demands the head of John the Baptist on a plate.
As she's wont to do. Is that a flute?
Shaken and disturbed from under soft white fur, see the dust in the morning bright sets the room alight. By the telly up your Salome.
The telly.
I stand before her amazed that she dances and demands the head of Isadora Duncan on a plate.
So we go from the familiar biblical tale of her requesting the head of John the Baptist on a plate, which I think is, that's, she danced for Herod, and he's impressed with her and grants her some sort of like request or something. I don't know. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I think it's something like she gets to make one request, and her request is the head of John the Baptist on the plate. Now, she requests the head of Isadora Duncan, who is like a turn of the 20th century dancer, who, if I recall correctly, had a pretty gruesome ending that involved neck and head trauma with a scarf and a wheel or something like that. Yeah, this is interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let's press on.
Oh, Salome. Salome.
Ooh, those touches on the cymbals. What's that? What's that high, almost whiny sound?
In the cold, coldest of night, fire allies to warm my bones. I've had enough of the dreadful cold from the flames up your Salome. I stand before her amazed as she dances and demands the head of any bastard on a plate.
Ooh. She just wants heads on plates. Wow, what an interestingly evocative song. Between these, like, this sort of arrangement that reminds me of like something that you would catch on a James Bond flick, you know what I mean, with these really interesting pretty keys and strings accompanied by this lovely guitar work. Yeah, it does remind me of something that would be in like a James Bond flick or something. It's very cinematic, regardless of what movie it would be featured in. It does have a very cinematic feel to it, and the lyrics are really interesting. I mean, you go from the literal story of Salome, or an allusion to it, to this, like I said, fast forward several years, to this, the tale of this American dancer, to her just wanting any bastard's head on a plate. Very evocative. I'm not sure exactly if this is a metaphor for something, or it's, trying to talk about something larger than what it just is on face value. But God, it so gorgeous. The tones and the way the strings stretch, and these touches on the cymbal, and even just these injections of, at one point I thought I was hearing flute, and then at a similar point later in the song there were these, it was like higher and a little whinier, but in a good way, and it only lasted a few seconds, but it was really interesting and caught my ear. Yeah, I would love to learn a bit more about this the song. Ooh, Oscar Wilde I see here. I'm sure John will have more information as it relates to all of this. And I certainly have got questions, and my interest has been piqued. So let's get back to him and see what he has to say about this thought-provoking track.
Steady on, Barker. He's back. So you've had to listen to Mr. Doherty, Salome. What do you reckon?
This was a really interesting listening experience. I really liked the song a lot. It begins with this like almost purring, low bassy notation with subtle like confidence that struts across the soundscape, and joining it are some very light touches on the cymbals and this lovely bit of acoustic guitar work. It's all kind of like moody, but in a really good way. And around the 22-second mark, old Pete's voice joins the mix, and he sets the scene as the narrator describes lighting a fire to warm his bones on the coldest of nights. And soon Salome appears from the flames. Um, this is all really evocative, and he's painting a very vivid picture. While he's noticing the cold of the night and Salome appears through the flames, I'm noticing these lovely touches on the acoustic guitar and some well-placed notation from some strings. And I'm fairly confident I catch a cello in there, a little lower in the, lower registered, but then these sort of stretched out slightly higher notes that sound like they're on the violin, maybe a viola, but they sound lovely and lush and add an extra dimension to the soundscape. And he as he lands on the name Salome, there's a smoothly delivered bit of electric guitar, which is a lovely little accented touch as well. Even as it picks through cleanly in this song, it sounds really great. And again, all these little pieces working together are these added brushworks of texture in the song, and it sounds awesome. Of course, he shows up or she shows up, forgive me, the titular character shows up to demand the head of John the Baptist on a plate, which is, that checks out. All that is, I'm no biblical scholar, but I recall that was part of the deal. She appeared and danced for
A
was
meal
it
deal, actually. Sorry.
yeah, she dances for Herod, who grants her a wish, and I believe her wish is John the Baptist's head on a plate. So this all checks out from a narrative standpoint and a hazy recollection standpoint. And whilst he begins the next stanza of lyrics about waking up the next morning, I believe I catch what sounds like a sustained flute note or two that's going off, and that's soon accompanied by more
Beautiful.
of those strings from earlier. And then he describes how the visage of Salome returns, but this time rather through the flames. It's by the telly, which is the last place I expected someone to run into Salome, if I'm being honest, just from my loose understanding of the history and the character herself. So yeah, I was slightly confused, but fuck it, it sounds great, so I'm here for it. With the same kind of punctuation on each note as appeared during the portion about John the Baptist, he exclaims that Salome wants the head of Isadora Duncan on a plate as well. This Salome is one bloodthirsty gal, and I'll tell you that, and a time traveler, it would seem too. So don't get on her bad side. I thought this was like back to that bit of confusion I mentioned earlier. I found this time hopping pretty interesting. We've gone from, like, I say literal, but at least as far as we're told, literal biblical times where you're sleeping by a fire and you wake up to requests of the head of John the Baptist, to seemingly waking up sometime around, again, and this doesn't even check out, around the turn of the 20th century, but then there appears a television, which is decades away from being introduced to the world, to this requesting the head of a popular dancer who, by the way, had a pretty gruesome ending herself that involved neck and head trauma, a scarf, and an early iteration of the automobile. So all this is really odd to me, but again, interesting nonetheless. I'd never thought in the same song, or the same day even, I would have thoughts of Salome and Herod and the request for John the Baptist's head, and then the death of Isadora Duncan coming at the hands of a scarf that got caught in a spoke of a wheel. But here we are. So yeah, interesting stuff. Pete repeats the refrain of "Oh Salome," And his wording on some of these words, and Salome is one of them, is really interesting. Like the way he breaks it up, I thought was kind of cool and caught my ear. So yeah, and whilst delivering this line, there's this beautiful touch of electric guitar notation that adds a bit of shine to the music. And after that, there is this semi-distant sound that I was kind of unsure of. It's kind of similar to that of what I heard from the flute in this fleeting 5 second moment, but this is a little higher and whinier. I liked it. I mean, whiny, I don't mean as a pejorative. I just mean that's kind of like the sound it had to it. But I don't know who the culprit is or what it is exactly. But it was a nice little subtle touch that I thought was cool. This gives way to another couple of stanzas devoted to yet another appearance by our titular character. And it begins just as the first verse did, with the narrator lighting a fire on a cold night to warm his bones. But this time, when Salome appears through the flames, he stands in her presence amazed, and she demands the head of any bastard on a plate. So, at this point, she's just a bloodthirsty bitch. Give me anything I can, I don't care who it is. Just give me a head on a plate, please, and thanks. Interesting stuff. I will say, I love the subtle culmination of the music as it swells during this portion. And that Doherty punctuates with his line, any bastard's head on a plate, before we get this lovely splash on the cymbal to punctuate the ending of the track. Yeah, I love this song. At certain points, with the lovely marriage of strings and guitar, it reminded me of something that could pass for a song on a Bond film. It had this very cinematic quality to it, a real storyteller quality to it as well. The subtlety of the instruments and their arrangements were perfect. And the subject matter, though murky, was undeniably interesting. So please tell me more. What was why the time? I don't know if you'll know this, but why the time jump and why this fixation on a desire for heads on a plate? Is she the symbol of a desire for death or destruction? What is the story here, man?
Okay. So thanks for listening to that. Thank you. That's some interesting points. I will say this. I really like the Libertines. Mr. Doherty's output since is variable. But this album is a perler. It really is. And I remember when I got it electronically, I haven't got it on vinyl. It's that sweet spot. 2009 it came out, so you can imagine if there was any copies of it on vinyl, which I don't even know. I think there was, but it would have been about 100 of them or something stupid. It would be very few. So, 10 years later, they're like 200 quid a pop or whatever. It's ridiculous. But I had it digitally, and some friends came round for a Jolly Boys, an all-day session drinking. I had a MP3 player on a speaker thing docked with a playlist. And I went to do some cooking inside, left them outside in the patio, put this album on, came back after 20 minutes, and all 5 of the guys who were there were absolutely transfixed. I said, this is unbelievably good. And they weren't fans of the Libertines or Mr. Doherty, so I'd highly recommend this album. I mean, there's certain people who probably won't like it, but I think... And I never found out for definite, but the 4th track is called A Little Death Around the Eyes. And it segues into this song almost seamlessly.
Okay, so it precedes
and there's
the song
something about
Okay.
Yeah. And the two together are fantastic. And I couldn't give you both. And I prefer this one just slightly to the other one, but I might give you the other one as well. And then you can, imagine it'll play them together if you want. But there was some rumors about this being a bit about the song before, A Little Death Around the Eyes, was something to do with some Needle with Alex Turner. And it was, but I haven't got to the bottom of it. It was just rumors and fanboy shit going on about it. But it's interesting because there are some, if you hear it, you'll recognize some Arctic Monkeys notation, a certain riff, which is very famous. Yeah, musically, not lyrically.
Okay.
You will recognize it straight away. And it's just really interesting. Then it then goes into this, which is it's just an amazing song. So I just thought all of it's very cool and interesting. So just a bit of background. Mr. Peter Doherty was born in Hexham, which is in Northumberland, right at the top. It's not that far from Hadrian's Wall. After school and A levels, he moved down to London to live with his grandma in a flat, and he got a job filling graves at Willesden Cemetery. Although apparently most of his time was spent reading and writing while sitting on gravestones, poised, I imagine, with his elbow on his knee, thinking. He attended Queen Mary College, part of the University of London, to study English Lit, but left the course after his first year. He then moved into a London flat with a friend and fellow musician Carl Barat, who had been a classmate of Doherty's older sister, Amy Jo, at Brunel University. And the two guys met when Amy Jo asked Barat to babysit Doherty while she attended a night class. So they hit it off, got a flat together. They formed the Libertines in the late 1990s and achieved critical and commercial success in 2002, release of their debut album, At the Bracket, produced by the wonderful Mick Jones. The group gained a dedicated cult following. A lot of people focused their attention on Mr. Doherty, and he, for whatever reason, he ended up in the headlines a lot. You know, there was the drugs, there was Kate Moss, there's all sorts of stuff. And his increasing drug problems led to his estrangement from the band. In the next year, 2003, he was jailed for burgling Barrett's flat. The two initially fell out over this incident, surprise, but made up while Doherty was in prison. He was originally sentenced to 6 months, but his sentence was cut to 2. He came out and did a gig the night he came out. And anyway, you imagine how messy that would have been. While post-production work was on for their second studio album in June 2004, he was asked again to leave the band. The band cited his continuing drug problems for his dismissal, but said that they'd take him back as long as he got himself sorted, which he didn't. So although Barat had previously stated that Libertines were merely on a hiatus, the group effectively abandoned, disbanded in 2004. But then fractured off to do various other projects: Yeti, Dirty Pretty Things, Baby Shambles, all with varying degrees of success-ish. Anyway, fast forward 2009 in March, Doherty's debut studio album, Grace/Wastelands, was released, of which this track is the 5th one. So, personnel on the album. Peter Doherty, acoustic guitar, piano, organ, harmonica, vocals, melodica. Trevor Myers, trombone. John Metcalf, viola. This is for the album, but I think a lot of this was used in this song. Stephen Street, dulcimer, acoustic guitar, harmonium, electric guitar, percussion, programming, background vocals, snare drums, mixing, mellotron, tambourine, and producer. And I do think the production on this song was really good.
Oh, it's outstanding.
Peter Wolf, who's a friend of Mr. Doherty's, composer and electric guitar. Dot Allison, vocals. Sophie Harris, cello. John Robinson, acoustic guitar, vocals. Martin Burgess, violin. Adam Fikek, accordion, cymbals, brushes, drums. Drew McConnell, bass. Stephen Large, organ. Piano and Vox Continental. Graham Coxon, for the guitarist from Blur, acoustic and electric guitar. And Benny Cummings, trumpet. Sally Herbert, violin. And Richard Costa, violin. So a nice cast there. Initial critical response to Grace/Wastelands was mixed stroke positive. Metacritic had it down at a score of 74 based on 22 reviews. I think, reading between the lines, a lot of people had an axe to grind with him, and they kind of took it out on the reviews.
I was just about
think,
to.
looking back on it, most people will say they were harsh.
Yeah, I'm sure some of that was earned. I mean, not that the panning of the album was earned, but the angst toward him, because I'm sure he was like, when he going through what he went through, I'm sure he was a volatile prick version of himself. And you burn bridges, and then this is you reap the benefits of that by getting panned reviews, even though they probably should have been much better. It is what it is.
Yeah. So The Observer wrote the album showcased Doherty as an outstanding singer-songwriter and charismatic poet stroke vagabond. BBC Music said the songs are mostly beautifully simple, which is refreshing. Doherty definitely allows his raw passion and musicality to take the lead. It says here, Salome is not much more than a guitar, a lot of cymbal. I You must be listening to the demo version because there's a lot. But this enhances the eeriness and almost haunting nature of the album. The album didn't sell as well as was expected, particularly in the UK, and it only got to number 17 in the album charts, which is reasonable enough. And it got to number 35 in the Billboard Heat Seekers chart. So I don't know how much success that is in the States, but probably not as much as the record label wanted.
Yeah,
probably. I think in retrospect, some people would change their minds on this. The other thing that people had a go on was his voice. Not being the best in the world. I think he has a very natural voice that's untrained and unharnessed. So you hear the flaws in his delivery, but you also hear the truth, as it were, Yeah. So that's, it is what you like, is what you like. Lyrics. In the coldest of nights, the fire I light to warm my bones. I've had enough of the dreadful cold. And from the flames appears Salome. I stand before her, amazed, as she dances and demands the head of John the Baptist on a plate. In the morning, shaken and disturbed, from under soft white fur, I see the dust in the morning bright, sets the room alive. And by the telly appears Salome. I stand before her, amazed, as she dances and demands the head of Isadora Duncan on a plate. Oh, it's Salome. Oh, it's Salome. In the coldest of nights, the fire I light to warm my bones. I've had enough of the dreadful cold, and from the flames appears Salome. I stand before her amazed as she dances and demands the head of any bastard on a plate. Yeah, I will say this. I think he set up the idea of Salome in the first verse, and then traditionally John the Baptist, so people can log it as what it means. But I think obviously clearly a device. Whether Salome represents the consequences of his appetites or his creativity or his drug addiction or whatever, and then the price, what they demand from him in return, I think it sets up the story of John the Baptist, and then who knows what Isadora Duncan means to Mr. P. Doherty. But any bastard on the plate is probably about, you get to a point where just anything will do. And I'm wondering where he's talking about lighting the flames to warm his bones on the coldest of nights. I'm wondering if that's talking either could be very obviously about withdrawal or creatively about block or whatever. That's the two angles, perhaps, but who knows what dares to dream. I will say, as I said before, the production of this is fantastic, and this has got, you mentioned it, accents. This has got more accents than an episode of Mind Your Language. That's for our older British viewers. But I just think the Stephen Street did a fantastic job with this, and I believe the guitar you hear in this, the acoustic guitar, is Graham Coxon. So yeah, just wonderful. And those touches, the flute, I think, is just beautiful. Really is. With the strings as well, amazing. And you have like a big, deep gong sound as well as a sort of like the splash, the crackling ball. There's all these different percussions. Really, really nice and controlled, not just bang. So yeah, as you mentioned, just for our viewers who don't know, Angela Isadora Duncan, 1877. Some people say 1878, until 1927, was an American-born dancer and choreographer who was the pioneer of modern contemporary dance and is known as the mother of dance. She was born and raised in California. She lived and danced in Western Europe, the USA, and Soviet Russia from the age of 22. She died when she was traveling in Nice, in France, which is nice. Her silk scarf draped around her neck with a present from one of her friends became entangled in the wheel wall around the open spokes of the wheel, the rear axle, and it pulled her from the open car, breaking her neck.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I think he did sever like the artery in her neck as well. Awful way to go out.
He'll probably do that. Yeah, apparently her friend said to her, put a cape on, and she goes, no, because it'll be cold in this open top car. And she goes, no, I'll wear your scarf. And it's flown away. And she watched it go off, and there you go. Anyway, since Doherty has since released a further 4 solo albums, the latest being Felt Better Alive in May of this year. I didn't know that until I started doing the research, so I've downloaded it. I haven't listened to it yet, just in case it isn't any good, because I don't want to spoil my mood. But I will do after this and let you know how good it is, or
Yeah,
not.
please do.
The Libertines reformed for some gigs in 2010, and then in 2014 they signed with Virgin and released their 3rd album, Anthems for the Doomed Youth, for Doomed Youth, the following year in 2015. Their latest album, All Quiet in the Eastern Esplanade, came out in 2024. In a 2022 interview with NME, Doherty stated that he had been clean since December 2019, if you believe that. There was a program on him, was it last year or the year before? I think it was around the time that the All Quiet in the Eastern Esplanade came out. And it was someone talking to him in France, I believe is where he's living. And he came across as really charming, lovable, and an absolute twat that you wouldn't trust as far as you could throw. You know, he'll let you down at every turn because he's just weak. And he was saying about how he was going to be straight, and his French wife, who seemed lovely, and he went off to play somewhere, and this guy goes, "Oh, do you want to actually come to a party?" And then he cut to like this like porter, cabin type thing, music blaring, and he's like pisses a fart. So he just can't say no to anything. And he kind of attracts the people who want to give him stuff as well. And then you saw him on the stage about an hour later, and I was like, "Oh my God, absolute fucking mess." but really lovable, and everybody still loves him, So there you go. So that's Salome. I'm glad you had to listen to it. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Really, he's really capable of some really beautiful stuff, and he doesn't like push. He just creates this. He's a great writer, is what he is. And I think this sort of shows it. This wonderful mood to it as well. So, all right, things up. Thanks for this, Andy. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, slap your paw down on the like button, and then in the comments sector, please tell me whose head you would like to bring to you on a plate. Perhaps Ronald McDonald. We'd love to hear from you what you think about this song, Mr. Doherty, Libertines, all that good stuff. Kate Moss, why not? And if you if you haven't subscribed already, please do. We're chuntering along like one of those idiotic marathon runners, just won't stop. We're pounding away and collecting subscriptions along the way. And when we get to 2,000, all our toenails will fall off. So yeah, please do sign up. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. I'll see all of you in the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.